Have you ever searched how to make money on Etsy on YouTube? You will see dozens of videos promising that if you just follow that creator's steps, you can make tens of thousands of dollars a month. But if you've been on Etsy for a while, you know there's a big difference between selling items and building a business. Vintage selling is not like handmade, digital, or print-on-demand shops. You can't crank out duplicates or chase quick cash. What we do takes trust and storytelling and staying power. I've learned that lesson the slow, rewarding way. One listing, one photograph, and one happy buyer at a time. Hi, I'm Carol, and I sell vintage home decor and collectibles on Etsy in my shop, V Vintage Collectibles. Over the years, I have built a business that's about far more than transactions. It's about curation, connection, and consistency. Today, I want to talk about what that really looks like behind the scenes, how focusing on quality, branding, and the customer experience has helped me to build a vintage business that lasts, and how that same steady approach is now shaping my YouTube journey. Let's start with how my perspective has changed since I first opened my shop, and why paying attention to the quality and specificity of what I source and list has made all the difference. When I first started selling vintage on Etsy just a little more than 3 years ago, I felt like I needed a certain number of listings just to survive in that marketplace. Now, I know it's not the number of listings, but the quality and the strategy behind sourcing pieces that align with what my customers are already drawn to in my shop. That allows me to not just survive, but to thrive. And unlike when I started, I have a clear path for the merchandise as it ages out in my shop, but that's a topic for another video. Stay tuned. I'll get to that eventually. I now carry about 300 listings active in my shop at any given time. My Michigan merchandise is currently inactive, and my Florida merchandise is currently active. Each listing is optimized with what I believe to be titles and descriptions that would be most helpful to anyone seeking the vintage that I have to offer. In other words, my titles and descriptions are written for my customers. I believe that my thumbnail photos help to draw potential buyers to my shop because they help people see those vintage items in a way that they can see them fitting into their lives. And I try to set my prices fairly and consistently across my shop. I also like to think that my completed attributes and tags do assist Etsy in showing my listings to the right potential customers. Those categories tell my story as a seller. They show buyers I know my niche and that I'll still be here when they come back looking for something that matches what they bought last year. Sure, I probably need to rework my About section. There could be a video coming up on that eventually. And update some photos and titles on old listings. But that sort of work really never ends, does it? I can't let thinking about those things paralyze me and keep me from moving forward. Buyers remember how you make them feel when they buy from your shop. They don't remember how fast you listed something. They remember warmth, care, and authenticity. The little touches that show there's a real person behind the shop. That's what turns one sale into a relationship. They respond to the feeling that someone truly cared about their experience. That keeps them coming back. That's what turns one sale into a relationship. I've worked to create a brand identity that's instantly recognizable when someone lands in my shop, one that evokes warmth, nostalgia, and timeless elegance. It's a brand I'm proud of. Recently, I read this comment on one of my videos here on YouTube from a viewer. She said, "Thank you for this video. I just visited your shop and you have beautiful items. How wonderful that you put a link in the description. I have watched a lot of so-called Etsy sellers and they never give the name of their shop." Well, I'm more than happy to invite my YouTube family to come over to my shop anytime. Then there are the invisible layers of my shop as well. The tone and consistency of my photographs, the storytelling approach I take to listing, how certain items I know are going to become keepsakes for customers, especially toasting glasses, anniversary gifts, and wedding cake toppers get extra special packaging, and the beautiful stickers I include as thank yous in my invoices all contribute to my customers' emotional experience. I want my customers to feel like they're opening something special when they open a purchase from my shop. Recently, I was kind of pondering on the fact that none of the items in my shop have an Etsy bestseller badge, and probably never will. How could one-of-a-kind items ever hope to become bestsellers? I looked at several other Etsy vintage shops, and guess what? No bestseller badges there either, but no surprise. And so I started wondering how vintage sellers could quantify their business beyond revenue, profit, and repeat buyers. And I did come up with a couple of ideas. However, I want to warn you that none of them are the epitome of how to judge your success as an Etsy seller. They're just pieces of information. One of those is my favorites ratio. So I pulled up my Etsy shop stats for the last 30 days, and here's what I found. My shop had 4,469 visits, and out of those, I received 549 favorites. When I divide 549 by 4,469, that gives me about 12%. And that number for a vintage shop, I hear, is excellent. Most sellers in the vintage space hover around 5 to 8%. So anything over 10 tells you that your photos and your overall presentation are really working. What it means is this: people aren't just clicking into my listings and moving on. They're actually saving them. That means my style, my photos, and my listings are resonating with them enough that they want to come back later. And in the vintage world, that's a huge sign of brand strength. We may not have items that sell over and over again like the mass-produced sellers do, but when shoppers start recognizing your look and trusting your listings, you are building something deeper than a quick sale. You are building a brand. I like to check this number once every couple of months. Once a month is probably too much, just to make sure that I'm staying in that range. If it ever dips below 10%, then I will know it's time to take a look at whether I've added items to my shop that don't really fit my usual look, or maybe I need a little bit more styling in my photos. The other number I like to keep an eye on is my conversion rate. That's basically how many people who visit my shop actually make a purchase. Don't start freaking out when you start seeing what these numbers are like, okay? Just stick with me for a second. So for the same 30-day period that my shop had 4,469 visits, I had 47 orders. When you divide 47 by 4,469, that gives you just a little over 1%, about 1.05%. Now, Etsy's overall average conversion rate runs somewhere between 1 and 3%. So for a vintage shop like mine, where almost everything is one of a kind, that's right where I would expect to be. It kind of looks like I didn't have that many sales in the last 30 days, and I will tell you, my sales have been down about 50%. They're starting to pick up now, but from the time I deactivated all of my Michigan items and I reactivated all of my Florida items, of which 80% I had updated titles and descriptions on, that really set my shop back. So I will check again at the end of December, and I think probably my conversion rate will be back up to about 2%, where I usually see it. The last 30 days have just been uncharacteristically slow for me, and that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. A mass-produced type shop might sell the same mug or t-shirt 50 times in a week, so their numbers climb faster. But in vintage, each sale represents a unique piece, finding the right buyer. The part that encourages me is how this fits together with that earlier number, my 12% favorites rate. This tells me people are really drawn to what they're seeing. They're just taking time to make that decision about buying. So for me, the focus isn't on trying to force faster conversions. It's on building trust, making sure my photos show scale clearly, that my condition notes are honest, and that my descriptions feel like I'm walking the buyer through the item in person. Those are the things that move someone from just admiring a piece to actually clicking add to cart and making the purchase. And when you're building a vintage business, not just chasing quick sales or flipping items, that kind of trust is the foundation that everything else rests on. By the way, I will put those formulas down in the description below in case you'd like to check out your shop and see how those rates are running for your business. Looking at those numbers reminds me that success on Etsy isn't about quick wins. It's about building something that lasts. And that's why the whole quick cash mindset just doesn't work in vintage. Sustainable vintage selling relies on patience, learning, and curation. You can't mass produce authenticity. Don't be discouraged if your business seems to be starting out slow. The truth is, I really don't know how many of those people who claim to have just started an Etsy shop and already made X thousands of dollars are actually on the level. You know the ones I mean. They are all over YouTube. I'm pretty sure that if they're being truthful about their earnings, they're probably not selling vintage. Realistically speaking, it takes time to build something of quality. I'm using the same mindset to build my YouTube channel that I have taken to build my Etsy vintage shop. Number one, careful acquisitions. Like the way I now source for my shop, knowing what will sell and about how long it will take to sell, along with how much I can ask for it, I'm now building my YouTube channel with strategically mixed video topics. I've got the Etsy how-to tutorials that viewers can go back to again and again as they need to. I know those videos will be watched for many months or even years to come. These are practical items that I stock my channel with. Number two, history and storytelling. Like how I write my titles and descriptions in my Etsy shop, The style and history videos on my YouTube channel, which by the way are my favorites to research, though they are very time consuming to produce, are educational content that even an audience beyond Etsy vintage sellers can enjoy. They don't equip viewers with tangible skills for doing Etsy, but they do educate viewers to source and appreciate vintage at deeper levels. And number 3, attention to customer connection. Just like I work to connect with my Etsy customers so they know that there's a real person behind that Etsy storefront, my Etsy tips and storytelling videos, specifically my new Friday chat style videos, of which this is one, seem to be even more popular than my Etsy tutorials based on number of views and number of subscribers that they're bringing in. Those are how I am seeking to connect with my viewers, hoping that hearing me talk about topics that we're all interested in will help my viewers get to know me better as a person and not just as a content creator. I guess what I've learned and what I'm basically trying to share today is this: there is no shortcut to something that is genuine. You build it one piece at a time, just like I've done with my shop, and now I'm doing with my channel. It's slow, steady, but it is so worth it. Thanks for joining me today.